We have a senior class that's graduating this year, and we have been wanting to have them sort of impart their wisdom on us. These are people that have walked this road before. For those of you guys who are juniors, sophomores, or freshmen, I am sure you are trying to figure out high school as best as you can. These are people that have done it before. And it's an opportunity just to get to know a little bit more of their story. So we're going to have one of our seniors come up and share a little bit of her story tonight. When I asked her to do this, I asked her to, she's not going to have time to share all of her story, and we kind of did that on purpose. Because if you want to hear more about that, go up and ask her about it. She would love to share more about that. Or if there's things that she says that relate to your own story or anything like that you want to hear more about, she would love to share that with you guys. But will you guys give a big welcome to my friend Sydney as she comes up here. Do you want a stool? Do you want to stand? I don't know.
I'll just stand. Where'd you go, buddy? Come here. Ready? So, hi, I'm Sydney. You may have seen my dog running around here before. This is Dallas. You also may have seen me in the Black Box. I run slides for Sunday and Summit. I'm also a CU commit for electrical engineering, so I'll be here for a while. And I'm here to share a little bit of my story with y'all. I was born in the Dallas metro area, and I moved to Houston when I was 9-ish for my mom's job. And I left Houston 3 weeks before my junior year was supposed to start. It was really last minute. Me and my sister and my mother all just collectively were like, this is our last chance to move. Because we were talking about CU and having this be the college that me and my sis might go to. And out of state is really expensive. So we moved within a week. And my dad was in Germany at the time on a business trip. And he was sick with the flu. And we were just kind of like, hey, within a week, we're going to Denver. See you there, essentially. And so we moved up and enrolled in Monarch. And the reason I left was because there were a few issues. The number one thing was I was in robotics at my old team, and it was very, very successful. But I had a mentor that was very manipulative. She could promise and deliver on everything she wanted, any scholarship, any award. She could deliver it and make good on her promise, but in order to do that, she would work all of her students to the bone, and she would lie behind our backs and manipulate us. So she'd say, oh, you do so much better than this person, and I can count on you always, so that you would never want to let her down. Eventually, I burnt out. I got really suicidal and depressed, and Houston, despite being a really top-grade medical center, there's not a lot of really good mental health resources. And so we moved up here, and I am very thankful for Monarch and the district support. My last school district essentially wouldn't give you any support unless you were like, hey, I'm about to kill myself over your school. And then they would finally be like, don't kill yourself, don't do that. But Monarch is active in trying to help their students and very lenient. My family has been super supportive. I found a therapist that's really, really helpful. And I found Ascent, which lets me have accommodations such as my dog that'll allow me to come here, because I get really bad anxiety when driving, so some days I just wouldn't be able to be here if I couldn't have him. I will say though, even though there's so many blessings here, not everything's super fine and dandy. When I went to Monarch, I only had a few months of school before everything shut down. And I know my voice is really shaky, that's just because I'm kind of anxious. But I only had a few months to make friends. But everyone during your junior year, you already have your friend groups, and a lot of people here have been friends since elementary, and you just don't move out. And so not a lot of people were really excited to have a new person or just didn't mesh well. And so COVID was really lonely for a while. And a lot of things also happened over COVID, social injustice, and I've had a really large struggle with Christianity itself. I found that I'm not a big fan of institutionalized religion, and as a bisexual, Vietnamese, Puerto Rican female, I don't like the way a lot of Christians talk I don't like the people they support a lot of the time. And so it really makes me question the religion as a whole, if these are the people who claim to call themselves Christians. And as I enter college, I really worry about how, if I'm going to be able to continue my research about this religion and see where that journey leads me. And I know that might be kind of strange to hear, that like someone who's here every single Sunday, and like Easter, we had 4 services, and I'm here like twice a week, isn't that like super devoted to Christianity, but like I really appreciate the people at Ascent, and I'm also like super scared of burning in hell for all eternity if I leave. So I know that it's kind of an odd perspective to share at a Christian like youth night, but I warned Chris of this ahead of time, and he said that he thinks that it might be beneficial to hear that you're allowed to be really questioning your religion and really question a lot of the things in it, and you can still show up, still learn, even if you're highly doubtful. And if you want more information on like where I'm at with my research or where I stand with it, feel free to talk to me. I'm always in the black box. Yeah.
This dog is so cute. Everyone could just give her another round of applause. It is really, really hard to come up and talk in front of people, and just in general, if you're giving a presentation, things like that. But it's way harder when you're sharing something personal about yourself. Some of you have experienced that if you've been up here before. But I really applaud Sydney and her courage to come and just be super open and vulnerable with us about some of the things she's going through and questioning. And we sincerely hope that you know that here at Summit, this is a spot where you can have questions and have different opinions and different ideas. This is not a spot where you have to come and, like I was talking about with some of your leaders earlier tonight, it's not a spot where you have to come and just check off all of the boxes in order to be here. You just come as you are. This is a spot where you can question and just think through things, and where you can belong before you believe. So we hope that you know that, and that wherever you are, whatever walk of faith you're in, that you can come here and feel super welcomed, and like you can voice what you're actually thinking and experiencing and feeling, and then we're going to answer that as honestly as we can with what we're thinking and experiencing and feeling as well. So for those who don't know me, my name's Katie. I've met probably most of you here. I'm really excited to get to chat with you a little bit. But before I start, I want to do a quick little poll here. So if you like the taste of coffee, I want you to raise your hand. Okay, this is not, I thought it would be an overwhelming win here. If you do not like the taste of coffee, raise your hand. Yes, these are my people out there. I am right there with you. I do not like the taste of coffee. It all started one dreadful day when I was in middle school, and my friend made me this cup of coffee that had, I don't know, she did something wrong, but there was something in it that made me super sick. I was nauseous, felt like I was gonna vomit for hours after drinking it, and ever since then, anytime I taste coffee, that feeling comes back. So I like the smell of it. I even like the idea of coffee, grabbing a cup of joe with your friends and getting to hang out and chat. But the taste of it, I just can't stand. So when I meet with friends for a cup of coffee, I usually end up getting a tea. If I'm feeling really fancy, I will get a chai, which is basically, it's a black tea that has I'm seeing some nods, so you guys are following what chai is. Awesome. It's got steamed milk in there. If you haven't tried one, you should, because it's like Christmas in a cup. Delicious. I look forward to that first taste of chai every time that I get one. It's a nice treat. And a couple weeks ago, when it was snowing and really cold out, I decided I was going to treat myself to a chai. And so I went to Starbucks, and I went through the drive-thru, I got a chai, and I went home, and I was sitting there, and I had my chai, and I was so excited for that first sip, and I took a sip and immediately spit it out, because instead of chai in that cup, they had made me a latte, and I could taste the coffee in there, and I was immediately filled with a sense of disappointment. I didn't get what I ordered, and I know a lot of you can probably relate to that. You've probably been to some sort of restaurant where you've ordered something, and they've messed up your order, they've given you the wrong thing, drink or food item, and when this happens, even if we're given something that would have tasted fine if it had been what you ordered, when we're given something that we didn't order, it's really, really natural to be filled with disappointment. And I think that life can be like this sometimes as well. See, we all have these hopes and these dreams and these desires for what our future is going to hold, and when they're not met, we feel disappointed. What I want to pose tonight is that we actually all have these little invisible boxes here that we carry around, and in these boxes we put our hopes and our dreams and our desires, and these things take a lot of different forms. So I've got some items here that represent some of our hopes, dreams, and desires. We'll see what we can find. One of them has to do with our appearances. We all have hopes and dreams and desires about what we're going to look like in the future, maybe how strong we're going to be, maybe in the future we're going to lose a little bit of weight, what our hair is going to look like, stuff like that. So that's one of the things that we'll carry around in our boxes. Another one, who here has played Bananagrams? Yes, this is a great game. Another one is we have hopes and dreams and desires about what our personalities are going to be like. And so maybe in the future, we think we're going to be a little bit funnier, a little bit kinder, a little bit more extroverted. So we might try to change and shape our personalities to fit what we want. And another one might be skills. So we have expectations about what we're going to be able to do in the future. Maybe it's a sport that we're trying to be really good at, or maybe it's trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, or to get good grades, or it's being in a school play or performance, things like that. So we'll fill our box with hopes and dreams and desires about what we're going to be able to do. Another one might be relationships. We have hopes and dreams and desires about who our friends are going to be, what they're going to be like, what we're going to do with them, also who we're going to date and how we're going to date, what we're going to do together. And so we'll put that into our box. Got a couple more in here. Yes, hopes and dreams and desires about our belongings. So this could be like the kinds of things that we're going to own. I remember entering high school and thinking, yes, I'm finally old enough to drive, and my parents are going to buy me this sick new car. And then that didn't happen, and I was disappointed. And then the last one, we have hopes and dreams and desires about money, how much we're going to make, what we're going to do with it. And so we carry around these boxes, and a lot of us will actually orient our life around trying to make these things come true. And they become these expectations that we have for what we want to accomplish in our lives. And so as we go about day to day, we're looking and waiting for someone or something to come along and to make these things come happen, or we're trying our very best to make them happen on our own. And sometimes we meet the mark, and it's really exciting. We tell a joke, and someone laughs at it, and it feels really good. We lose 5 pounds, or maybe we start dating that special someone. But sometimes we don't get these things. That person breaks up with us, or we stay in the relationship, but it's not what we thought it was going to be like. Or no matter how hard we try, we just feel really anxious all the time, or we struggle with some of the things that Sydney was talking about, and we just can't seem to change that no matter how much we want to. Or we get a bad grade, or we get kicked off the team, or we don't make the team, and so our skills just aren't there, and we feel disappointed. We feel discouraged. We feel sometimes even disgusted, and we feel doubt. There's disappointment in what feels like a lost dream. There's discouragement, and maybe no matter how hard I try to make these things happen, they're just not happening, so maybe I should just stop trying. There's disgust that even if what we got in life wasn't something that was terrible, it wasn't the chai or the tea that we had ordered, and so we don't like the taste of it. Or maybe we doubt that God has a good plan for our lives, or we doubt in existence at all. And so when these expectations aren't met, we can start to feel those things. And sometimes we'll voice it to our friends, to our neighbors. And a lot of times we'll get these cliches back, like, oh, just keep trying. If you try harder, you're going to do it. I promise you, like, it's going to be okay. You're going to achieve your goals someday. People say those things at us. In the Christian community, they'll sometimes quote scripture at us, like, that'll make it all better. Like, there's this one verse that people say, which says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And so people will say that at us, and it sounds really good. But sometimes we can wonder if it's actually true. And we can fall into one of two thought patterns. One is that we'll hear a verse like that, and we'll think, okay, so I'm really struggling right now. I can't make these things come true, but God promises that he's got a good plan for me, so I'm just going to cling to that, and someday I'll get there, so we just keep trying. Or the second thing that happens is we read scripture like that as evidence that God does not exist, because we don't feel like we're prospering. And if God promised us that we would prosper, but we're not prospering, then God just can't be real. But the thing about that verse, if you could throw it up here one more time, the thing about this verse is that it's very often misunderstood and misquoted in Christian culture. I actually think that it's one of the most misunderstood verses that I will hear in churches. And so tonight I want to just unpack that a little bit and see if we can figure out what this verse is actually getting at and talking about. And so in order to do that, we have to understand the context behind why it was written. You see, this verse is often just pulled out and plastered on walls or tattooed or things like that, but it's not very often found with the content that comes before and after it. And so that's what we're going to look at. But to do that, we have to know who wrote it. And it was written by this guy named Jeremiah, and he was an Israelite. And so to understand who the Israelites were, we actually have to go back way into history. So we'll do a quick history lesson here. I promise it won't be too long and too boring. But to understand this history, we have to look at who Abraham was. So if you've been around a church before, you've probably, yes, I see all of you. If you've been around a church before, then you've probably heard the name Abraham. Father Abraham had many sons had Father Abraham. That song that's been stuck in my head all day as I've been thinking about this talk. But Abraham, he lived a long time ago, and he is the father of the three modern-day biggest religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And so he's a really, really important figure in the Bible, but also in just world history as a whole. He talked with God, and God gave him a promise, or something known in the Bible as a covenant, which was that he was going to have a lot of kids. There are three parts of God's promise to him. He's going to have a lot of kids. He was going to have a land that these kids could live in, or a promised land flowing with milk and honey. And the third part of that promise was that these kiddos were going to be blessed, and that they were going to go out into the world and actually bless the world. So 3 promises to Abraham. Abraham, he does have a kid, a couple kids, but one of them, his name is Isaac. And Isaac has a kid, and his kid's name was Jacob. Now, if you've read the Bible at all, maybe you've heard a story about this guy named Jacob who wrestled an angel. Well, when this happens, Jacob wrestles this angel. God changes his name, and he starts to call him Israel instead of Jacob, because Israel means the one who wrestles, the one who struggles. And so Jacob becomes Israel. So whenever you see the word Jacob in the Bible, I want you to think Israel. And Israel actually has 12 sons. One of them's name is Joseph with the fancy, like, multicolored coat, who gets sold into slavery, if you've heard of him. But Jacob, or Israel, has 12 sons who all then go off and have many, many more children as well. So those children, whoever is related to Jacob, Israel, is known as an Israelite. So if you were an Israelite, then you would have grown up thinking about and hearing about the promise that God made to Abraham, the promise that they were going to have a lot of descendants, that they were going to go into this incredible land, and that in this land they would be blessed. And so they would cling to that promise. But that's not what happened, at least not right away for the Israelites. Somewhere down here, after these 12 sons had had many generations of families, these Israelites were enslaved in a place called Egypt, and they lived for 430 years in slavery, having to make bricks for the Egyptians. And then finally, one day, this guy named Moses grabbed them, and they walked up out of Egypt, and they crossed over the Red Sea, and they were freed from slavery. And so at that point, it's been several generations of Israelites hoping and dreaming and desiring to get into the Promised Land, and it hasn't happened yet. And finally, they're free from slavery. And then they're forced to spend 40 more years wandering through the desert, living in the desert, before this guy named Joshua takes them, and they finally enter that promised land flowing with milk and honey. And so they finally get there, and they're thinking, yes, like some of our expectations have finally come true. And then something else happens. A people called the Babylonians come, and they enslave them. They take them captive, and they bring them into exile into a place called Babylon. And so it's here in exile that we actually finally, after all of that, meet the character Jeremiah. And so Jeremiah, he was a prophet, which basically means he's someone who God spoke to and gave him messages to tell all of the people, all of the Israelites. And so God speaks to Jeremiah, and he says, I want you to go to the people, and I want you to tell him this. I want you to tell them to seek the peace and the prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile, to pray to the Lord for it. Because if it prospers, then you too will prosper. So he's telling them this, and the Israelites are there, and they're thinking, this is not what I wanted to hear. You see, they wanted Jeremiah to tell them that they were only going to be in exile for a little while, and then they were going to be able to go home and take over their promised land and live in the promised land and live in peace. They wanted these hopes and these dreams and these desires to not be in vain. But the reality is that they're told to stay in exile and actually help prosper the nation and the people who had taken them captive, who had made their expectations postponed. I think that in some ways, this would have caused an incredible amount of doubt and discouragement and disgust for the Israelites, who are thinking, man, but when are we going to go into the promised land? And Jeremiah, actually, he follows it up with another kind of low blow, and he tells them in this next verse that they're actually going to have to stay in captivity for 70 more years. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I, the Lord, will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. So God's saying, I am going to fulfill that promise to Abraham, but it's going to be in 70 years, which probably would mean that it's not going to be in your lifetime. For a lot of those people who were taken out of the promised land and into captivity, they were probably going to die in captivity. And maybe if they had kids, young kids, those kids would see the promised land. But they wouldn't. And so Jeremiah is telling them this, and then that is when he hits them with what I like to call a right hook verse, because it just comes out of nowhere and really smacks them in the gut. And it's the verse that we said earlier that says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. The heart of this verse is not that we would escape the harsh realities of life. It's not that God would just swoop in and make this box of expectations a reality, would make all of our hopes and our dreams and our desires come true. The heart of this verse is that we would learn to thrive in the midst of unmet expectations. That when we're served coffee instead of tea, we would approach it not with that disappointment, that discouragement, that disgust, or doubt, but instead with the hope that maybe, just maybe, the outcome could actually lead to a different kind of blessing, a different type of prosperity. And this is really kind of a hard thing to swallow, because it means that following God is not about believing that he's going to take away all of the hard stuff in our life or fulfill all of our dreams and our desires in the exact way we want him to. And that's not to say that God doesn't care about this box that we have, because he does. He gave us hopes and dreams and desires for a reason, and it's actually a really beautiful thing that we are able to think about the future and to plan for things and to make goals and to work towards those goals. That's a really, really good thing. And actually often a holy thing, and I hope that some of these things that are in your box do come true for you. But the thing is that if we get so caught up in trying to make this box a reality, that we zero in our focus on this being the ultimate goal and purpose of our life, then we can miss the point, and we can actually miss a greater blessing that God might have for us. You see, with the Israelites in Babylon, God was directly positioning them to actually do exactly what he said he was going to do with Abraham, which was to go out and bless the world, bless other people. And that's what he was giving them the opportunity to do by calling them to stay in Babylon for just a little while longer before going to the promised land. So I think about that in our lives as well, and how sometimes maybe God is actually directly positioning us in a spot where maybe some of these desires and dreams are delayed a little bit or changed a little bit, but he's actually giving us the opportunity to be a part of something bigger. So I'm going to invite our band to come up here on the stage, and I've got a couple of questions for you to think about in your small groups tonight, or just on your own. And my first question for you is this: what is in your box? What are your hopes and your dreams and your desires for your future? And what will you do if they don't come true, if some of them are not realized? And I'm not asking that to say that these are bad things. Again, I believe a lot of them are probably really good things that I hope happen for you. But I'm asking that because I think when we genuinely take a look at what's in our box and ask what we'd feel if they don't come true, then that reveals how much worth we are putting into the things in here instead of into God. I was once told that if a good thing that's not God becomes the ultimate thing that you're searching for in your life, then that good thing is going to become a really bad thing, because it's going to take away your ability to find contentment and to receive some of those blessings from God. And so just asking that question can help us to start to identify where we're putting our true meaning and value and purpose of life. And so the second question that I want you guys to be asking yourselves tonight is, what are some of the hopes and dreams and desires that you have that have gone unmet in your life? Just think about those things that you really wanted or were working towards or striving towards that just didn't happen the way that you wanted them to, and start to ask the question, is there a possibility that God was actually positioning you for something greater in this moment? So I'm going to pray out for us, and then we get to worship a little bit and then go into a time of small groups. Dear God, I thank you for giving us dreams and desires and hopes, and giving us creativity to plan for our futures and to work towards goals and to make those things happen. That's a really beautiful and wonderful and incredible thing. But God, I pray that that would not be where we put our ultimate purpose and our ultimate goal, but instead, Lord, would we turn to you and be asking the question, Lord, what do you have for me? Lord, would we learn to trust that you do have a good future planned out for us, that you do want to bring us into prosperity, and that sometimes, Lord, that means delaying or setting aside some of our own expectations so that you can bring in something better. So, Lord, I just pray that we would start to recognize some of those areas in our lives as we head out and learn to put our trust in you. Amen.
Thank you, Katie. So we're going to do a song here, and we'll give you kind of a different opportunity here where you can sit, you can stand, it's really up to you. You can sing, you cannot sing, but it's a song that's just a reflection of wherever you are, whether you're feeling great, whether you're weighed down with problems. There's people in both categories. It's just a thankfulness and a reminder that in both of those scenarios that God is still with you. So I just invite you to worship with us, whether it's just reflecting or singing with us or whatever that might be for you right now.
God is my shepherd, I won't be wanting, I won't be wanting. He makes me rest, fields of green, quiet streams. Even though I walk through the valley of death and dying, I will not fear. You are with me. You are with me. The shepherd's staff comforts me. You are my feast, presence of enemy. Surely goodness follow me, follow me. In the house of God forever. God is my shepherd, won't be wanting, won't be wanting. He makes me rest in fields of green, quiet streams. Even though I walk through the valley of death and dying, I will not fear, 'cause you are with me. You're always with me. Shepherd's staff comforts me. You are my feast, in presence of enemy. Surely goodness will follow me, follow me. In the house of God forever. In the house of God forever. The house of God forever. And now I will invite you guys to stand and worship with us still.
This is my prayer in the desert, when all that's within me feels dry. This is my prayer in my hunger and need. My God is the God who provides. And this is my prayer in the fire, in weakness or trial or pain. There is a faith proved a more worth than gold, so far through the flame. I will bring praise, I will against me shall remain. I will bring joy, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. And this is my prayer in the battle, when triumph is still on its way. I am a conqueror and co-heir with Christ, so firm on His promise I'll stand. And I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. All of my life, in every season, You are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. All of my life, in every season, You are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. All of my life, in every season, You are still God. I have a reason to sing. I have a reason to worship. I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. Yes, I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. And this is my prayer in the harvest, when favor and providence flow. I know I'm filled to be emptied again. The seed I've received I will sow.